The views expressed are those of the participants and do not represent an endorsement of any particular position, program, religion, or political affiliation. DFG's Corner is intended to provide information, observations, and entertainment. Guests are encouraged to comment, like, share, or subscribe.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is DFG, the man with the golden voice, the lady's choice, and of course, always smooth as a Rolls Royce. I'm coming to you live from the 571 where I'm having fun and I'm getting things done. Tonight's show is going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. I was just going to do an open forum, but I did come up with something at the last minute based off a conversation I had last week. I'm going to switch it over right now. Give me a second because this is a pretty long one, but I'm gonna let it play through. And before I start, I want to talk to my favorite sister from the same mister. Go on, Apple. How you doing?
I'm doing good. You got
And
me smiling. I'm the favorite sister this week. Yay.
you here first. It's all
I
good.
like
It's all good. It's all good. It's all love. And I got Miss Kim on, and hopefully she wasn't feeling well earlier, but hopefully she's feeling better now. Got a few on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, IG Live, Rumble Live, and a couple of other platforms that I'm too lazy to figure out. So before I start, I'm gonna hit this. This is called generational love, how each generation sees love, marriage, and commitment. Listen to me. Good day. This is DFG, the man with the golden voice, the lady's choice, and of course, smooth as a Rolls Royce. Today's DFG podcast is how each generation sees love, marriage, and commitment. Nobody wants to get married anymore. Okay, or hear me out. People still want to love, they just don't want to deal with that their parents got sold. Every generation is dating, committing, and partnering under different rules, and then judging everybody else like it's the same game. Welcome back to DFG's Corner. Again, I'm DFG, and today we're talking about how the silent generation, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z look at relationships and marriage, and why the kids these days argument is usually lazy. This isn't just vibes. This is economics, culture, tech, and expectations crashing into each other. I'm going generation by generation, then we'll zoom out to the big shifts. How marriage went from survival to self actualization. How gender roles got flipped and scrambled, and why tech turned dating into a 24/7 audition. And I'll wrap up with one takeaway you can actually use the next time somebody starts a dating war in the group chat. Segment 1: The Silent Generation. These are the people who were born between 1928 and 1945. The core idea: marriage was duty first, love was nice, but stability was the mission. Marriage was the default path into adulthood. There wasn't a big menu of other options, and nobody was asking you to optimize your life like a startup. Divorce wasn't just hard, it was socially radioactive, so people learned to endure. Gender roles were clear and rigid: provider versus homemaker. Emotional fulfillment mattered, but usually stability came first. Stay together for the sake of the kids. And why does this make sense? Post war culture rewarded conformity and sticking with it. A single income could realistically support a household, and religion and community institutions heavily shaped relationship norms. Segment 2: Baby Boomers. These are the ones that were born between 1946 and 1964. The core idea: marriage was still the thing, but now it also had to make you happy. No pressure. They inherited traditional marriage and layered in the idea of finding yourself. Divorce went from unthinkable to unfortunate but doable, especially in the 70s and 80s. A lot of people married young, divorced, and remarried. Commitment mattered and happiness mattered. Why does this make sense? Cultural shifts like the sexual revolution and women entering the workforce in large numbers changed expectations. Individual roles. People expected relationships to match their personal identity. Economic stability made it more possible to leave and start over. Segment 3, my favorite segment, Generation X, those born between 1965 and 1980. Marriage became a cautious business decision. Partnership, yes, but with an exit plan in the back of your mind. A lot of us watched divorce real close and forever sounded like marketing. Independence and emotion and boundaries mattered a lot. We tended to marry later and often stayed married longer once we chose it. We pushed towards equality while still dealing with leftover gender role tension. And why does this make sense? A lot of us Gen Xers grew up as latchkey kids, learning self-reliance early. We saw the 1950s family ideal crack in real time. Economic uncertainty, thanks to Reaganomics, made them cautious about big life commitments. Segment 4, Millennials, those who were born 1981 through 1996. The core idea was that marriage became the capstone, not the foundation. Basically, let me get my life together first, and then I'll think about vows. Marriage is often viewed as something you do once career, finances, and identity feel solid. Many of them delayed marriage compared to previous generations. Emotional intimacy, mental health, and real compatibility moved to the top of the list. Rigid gender roles were questions, and a lot of couples aimed for shared labor. Cohabitation and longer pre-marriage timelines became the norm. And why does this make sense? Student debt and housing costs made starting a household feel like applying for a mortgage and a miracle at the same time. Economic insecurity made people get more cautious. Therapy culture and emotional vocabulary grew. Less institutional pressure, like religion, to marry early. More expectation of equality and shared responsibilities. Segment 5, Gen Z, born from 1997 to 2012. The core idea of these are relationships are opt-in and not automatic. If one doesn't align, it doesn't get a lifeline subscription. Many don't see marriage as necessary for a committed life. Mental health, boundaries, and autonomy are non-negotiable. More openness to LGBTQ+ relationships and non-traditional family structures. A heavy emphasis on transparency, communication, and emotional safety. Skepticism towards institution, while still wanting love and partnership. Why does this make sense? They grew up online, seeing more relationship models than any generation before. Economic instability is their normal. More awareness of trauma, attachment, and emotional labor language. And lower trust in institutions, including marriage as a legal contract. Also, on the side note, most of these people were born during or were very young when 9/11 happened, so they lived over half their lives in a war. Segment 6, a note on how structural factors shape relationship patterns in different communities. One important layer in this conversation, relationship and marriage patterns can look different across communities. And a lot of that comes down to structural forces, not values or effort. For example, across generations, many Black American families have navigated challenges such as economic inequality and wage gaps, higher incarceration rates and the ripple effects on families, gender ratio imbalance, and in some local dating markets, changes in church influence in community institutions, as well as shifts in gender expectations and economic roles. Here's the takeaway. When marriage rate shift is often tied to economics, demographics, and policy, not for a lack of desire for commitment. Segment 7, big shifts that explain everything. Shift number one, marriage moved from survival to stability to fulfillment to self actualization. Listen how the job of marriage changes as the decades move forward. Silent generation, survival and duty. Boomers, stability and personal happiness. Gen X, partnership and independence. Millennials, fulfillment and equality. Gen Z, self actualization and emotional safety. Shift 2, gender roles got rewritten. In general, younger generations tend to expect things like shared labor, emotional availability, communication skills, and flexibility, while older generations were often taught to prioritize role clarity, duty, sacrifice, and stability. Shift number 3, economics changed the timeline of adulthood. How? Housing costs, student debt, wage stagnation, and delayed adulthood. When housing, education, and everyday life get more expensive, marriage starts to look less like a starting line and more like something people feel they need to earn. In that sense, it could feel like a luxury good and not a default step. And shift number 4, technology reshaped dating. Oh boy, did it. Online dating, social media, situationships, ghosting, and infinite choice paradox. And this part that really matters. Younger generations are dating inside a system older generations never had to deal with. Apps, algorithm, endless options, and constant feeling that if you don't choose perfectly, you choose wrong. It's not more freedom, it's more choice. We can also call it paralysis by analysis, meaning you have so many choices that you find it hard to make a choice, so you just keep choosing. And in closing, the core insight, here's the bottom line. Each generation relationships choices are a response to world they got handed. Different money, different rules, different risks, different language for feeling. So instead of yelling back in my day or stay off my grass, maybe ask, what did your day actually cost? And what did mine cost? If this episode made you nod your head or made you want to argue with me, send it to one person who swears dating was better in their era. Let's just see how that goes. Want a part 2? Tell me your generation. Silent, Boomer, Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z. And give me the one thing your generation gets right about love and one thing that it absolutely fumbles. All right. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. This is DFG. Never make love by the garden gate. Though love is blind, the neighbors ain't. That was that's what I put together today. Um I wanna if you're going to answer, I just wanna just say what generation you're from and what your generation did well, what your generation fumbled. Everybody in here, mostly everybody in here, we got like 3 boomers and the rest are Gen X. I'm gonna start off with Chocolate Pearl.
Because I just got on late. I didn't hear any of that until, except for the ending. So you
It's
have to skip me.
different. Is different. How each is different generational love. How each generation sees love, marriage, and commitment. What generation are you from?
I think I'm from Gen Z.
You're not Gen Z.
What am I?
You're Gen X.
Gen X. Okay. Got the wrong alphabet.
So what did Gen X do well as far as dating?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you because I am a different breed. Uh, I see common sense when it comes to dating. So a lot of people don't see common sense. So I don't know. Um, I see a lot of pettiness in my generation. I see a lot of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Gold digging in my generation, and a lot of independence. I don't need you, but I want your money.
Ain't nothing going on but the rent.
Yeah. So
That was while we were in high school. Ain't nothing going on but the rent. What have you done for
yeah.
me lately, Eddie? And things like that. Dabs, you're technically a baby boomer. So what did the baby boomers do right, and what could they work on?
I'm Generation X. But anyway, um, what did they do right? I think the back at that time, I think we lived more of a full life, I think, than people are doing now. People are so in a rush nowadays to make things happen. Everything's got to be done now. You need this now. I need that now. My phone is too slow. My computer's too slow. Stuff we didn't have to worry about. And we were able to live, um, I guess, yeah, like I said, a little bit slower. We didn't have to, everything wasn't such a rush. And I think that was some of the things we did right at that time than people are doing now. And the way I'm just trying to think from standpoint of, because when you're getting older, the generation X versus the Y versus the boomer versus whatever it is, you kind of got to change as yourself. You got to kind of change along with it as well. I may have been born in that age and at that time, and people, at that, if I see things at that time was that way, but so a lot of times we conform to whatever the new generation, is fancy at the time. So
Well, boomers pretty much cornered the market on divorcing. I know growing up, every all our friends, everybody in my age group, parents had split up. Now some stayed together. There were a couple that stayed together, but the majority of them, mommy lived one place, daddy lived another place. Mommy had a boyfriend, daddy had a girlfriend.
I don't know. I didn't really have that down. I guess maybe too, it's where you are. Because I can remember all my friends going over to my friend's house and stuff. All my friends parents were together. I mean,
But most of them were probably silent. Your parents were probably silent generation, and they stayed together most of
yeah,
the time. They stayed together. I know Miss Kim's parents were silent generation, and they stayed. They
right,
really believed in till death do you part,
right.
do us part. However, that's not. I mean, that wasn't my parents. My parents were boomers they were beginning boomers, and they split up, they got back together, they split up,
Well,
and we pretty much had bonus parents.
what year
Grow
was? Oh, Boomers was before '60s, right? '60s.
well 40 from 1946
Okay,
to 1964,
okay, yeah, all right,
but most of your parents that were in silent generation, most of them stayed together. Like I said, they were really the death do us part
right.
generation. What about you, Madam D?
I was born in 61, so I'm definitely a boomer. If I have to kind of think about relationships, I pretty much came up with the 70s crowd because I was kind of in between being I was born in 61 when all the civil rights stuff was going on. I was like in elementary school. So then when the 70s came about, that's when it was more about the revolution and hippies and sex, drugs, rock and roll. We were more free spirits. And then I graduated in 80. So by that time, things had started kind of shifting. But we were just free spirit. Like my mom like raised us, and you had the feminist movement. So women were like independent, like, and maybe that's contributed to the high divorce rates. Like, you don't have to take no junk. We're making our money. We're in the workforce. and Black women were still dealing with Jim Crow stuff even in the 70s, but it was more of a covert racism where they were more sneaky with it. They weren't as open with it because you had affirmative action and different civil rights laws that had been passed in the 60s. So it was an interesting era. I think that we were just free spirits. And when I have to describe myself, I tell most people that I'm a hippie without the drugs, minus the drugs. And, they were like, what? Yeah, I was a free spirit, but I just didn't get into the drug culture. And I even had a kid ask me that once in subbing, said, Miss D, are you a hippie? I said, well, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just kind of a free spirit, did my own little thing, went to church with my little mini skirt on just to be defiant. We were more um, revolutionary and do your own thing, but at the same time, women were trying to gain respect through the feminist movement. So we kind of didn't just stay in the marriages, we would leave.
And how do you think that affected the following generations? Because they really, in YouTube land, one of my day ones, we call him Big Will. His parents were together. Another friend of mine, Macho, his parents were together, but the rest of our crew, our parents were split.
I think in America that America's system was designed to do that anyways, because you had a lot of people that were, I know where I live, a lot of people were on public assistance. So public assistance, the man could not, if you were getting a subsidized apartment, the man could not be there, or be caught there, like in the movie Claudine, the welfare man, when they had to make it look like nobody lived there other than
Yep.
her and her kids. And I think, slavery separated us. And then in the 70s, you had a lot of people were getting on public assistance because that's when we call them the projects where I stayed. That's when they built a lot of new projects, and if you think about it, it was kind of like Harlem in New York. Like they were funneling us to one area. But my mom was always, we did live in public housing, but she was always one that I'm going to do better. She didn't see it as something she was going to stay in. It was just like what she could do at that time.
And that was the attitude at the
Yeah.
time when because I'm a we call it in New York we call it NYCHA, New York
Yeah.
City Housing Authority. I'm a NYCHA alum as is Chocolate Pearl and Apple.
Hmm.
Um, in the 70s when we were growing up, we used to laud and applaud people who left the projects. We like
Yeah.
y'all getting out, y'all
Yeah.
getting out. I go back 15, 20 years later and I see some of the same dudes I grew up with,
Yeah. Unfortunately.
and they don't ever want to leave.
Mm-mm.
They don't ever want to leave.
But
And
the thing is, when my mom got a house, it was a bridge that separated the projects and then this subdivision. It was a black subdivision, but it was better than the projects. And so when she got a house in that subdivision, I remember being extremely upset because all of my friends were in the project. And the one that we lived in, we moved over there when it was first built. So it was like home, home. And I felt like she was taking a part of me away, but she was actually trying to make things better for us. But the system, and I always go back to the system, because it was designed to it was almost like the making of a slave. It was designed to mess with our heads, like this is where you belong. If you leave, you won't get this assistance or that assistance. And in working with welfare to work clients, that was the thing. Like if I get off welfare, I won't have health benefits or I won't get my food stamps. It was just built that way. And even when they were talking about the food stamps, one of the kids say, well, he's cutting the food stamps. My mama can't buy no chips no more. And it was like, really?
but that's I um food stamps is a kind of touchy subject,
It is.
and you know, it's not what you buy or can't buy. It's
Hmm.
been vilified, even though we're not the biggest recipients of um SNAP and
Yeah.
TANF. We're the face of it.
Hmm.
One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that about 20,000 U.S. military members and their families are on SNAP.
Yep.
And so you're basically punishing them, and you can't say soldiers are lazy, or
Hmm.
you can't say military members are lazy, but I mean it happens. But with
Hmm.
with with that coming up, with all of that coming up, and all a lot of that social stuff, we caught the tail end of prosperity, and until
Hmm.
the beginning of the 80s we were still okay, but by the end of the 80s, with crack and deindustrialization of the cities, you
Hmm.
couldn't go. My father didn't even graduate high school, and he had a city job at the hospital. My mother was a high school graduate. She had a city
Hmm.
job.
Hmm.
My grandmother didn't have a college degree. She had a city job. And so we had all of those, and they made poor choices and lost those jobs, but you can't do that these days. We couldn't graduate high school and pretty much be guaranteed a factory job or a social work job or anything like that. And that kind of messed up everybody, because um it was a lot of things is when and I'm gonna leave it at that. But
Yeah.
it also saw how different generations look at selecting partners. Our parents, yeah, they probably were put together. They probably didn't, they courted, they went out, everything was organized, and
Hmm.
they might not necessarily love the person, but they said they didn't necessarily love the person, but that's the person they was with, so they stuck together.
Hmm.
Baby boomers had more freedom, because one of the things was TV was a big thing, and a lot of stuff was invented after after World War II and during Vietnam. So you started losing more and more people, and you know Gen X was coming up in the 70s, and like I said, a lot of us raised ourselves pretty much. We had to learn how to hustle, scramble. We had to do things, and that changed. You know, the young ladies were wearing less and less clothes, and the guys were wearing, well, you know how it was in the 70s. Everybody wore tight clothing, but everybody was thinner back then. And as deindustrialization and the war on drugs and the war on different things came to, and those people that were remaining in lower economic statuses, it went from security to, what have you done for me lately? How can I take advantage? And guys were all chasing the booty, and the women were trying to secure something in their pocket. Whether they liked the guy or not was ancillary. It wasn't, not saying not real. It wasn't what our parents or our parents' parents did. So we had a lot of issues, but we didn't, and then, you know, we went from latchkey kids to our kids. We're being helicopter parents over our kids, because we're more involved in our kids' life than our parents were in our lives. I can pretty much say that, and not be exaggerating, because we saw stuff growing up. The the smack era and the C-rack era, and all of those things, and people was losing their relationships and marriages over drugs and over alcoholism, and some over abuse. So we didn't want our kids to go through that. So we did less arguing. We did less arguing, but in that case, our kids really never got conflict resolution skills. So when they started dating, they didn't know how to handle conflict resolution. We knew how to do it because, like I said, we raised ourselves. It was fight or flight. It was, you're not getting over on me. And now we're seeing our kids and our children's children, how they're coming up. They're not as helicoptered as we did to our kids. But I mean, like I said in the video, you know, kids born after 1998, 97, half their life was war. Said we went to two war in the last 25 years. We've been through two wars. We've been through, you know, we've been through the president twice. And I'm not gonna mention his name. Y'all know who I'm talking about. We've been through economic ruin. Nobody, I mean, everybody in the house got to work in order for you to have something decent. And that's not what we grew up with. Our parents were able to, one was able to stay home, and women couldn't work as much. But when they started working, we had a we were a lot they were a lot bet we were a lot better off than our parents. And we are the last generation, Generation X, I'm saying, that could be better than our parents. I don't think our kids will do better than us because the opportunities aren't there. Like I said, they've been through war, pandemics, they've been through a lot of stuff. They've been through a lot of stuff, and half of them, they growing up in the internet, they growing up in a whole different world than us. And even though we have some understanding of this world, we're not we're not we're not really we're attached to the world. We're not in that type of world. Dr. Fab, what do you think? You're close to Gen X, but you're a boomer. What did your generation do well, and what they didn't, and what they fumbled on?
Well, I can't say what ours done, but what I did because I looked at my parents and marriage was very important to them. And so it was almost like the dog, the picket fence, and all of that. So when my parents, they stayed together forever and a lifetime. So when I grew up, that was what I was looking to have as far as marriage. And I won't say, well, I lived a different lifestyle. You all were talking about the projects, this and that and the other. And sometimes I can't relate because my dad was like George Jefferson. He was trying to move on up. And it's funny when I hear different people say different things because I can't relate to certain lifestyle because I didn't live that lifestyle. But I will say with parents, seeing parents that stayed together in my lifestyle, most of them my parents didn't drink, but my neighbors, because they were stressed about money, this and that and the other, I would see them drink every Friday. And back then the women would smoke Benson and Hedges Gold just like the men did. And I'm going to say that back in that time with my parents, because they were so stressed about making it to the top, this and that and the third, to the majority of them ended up either alcoholics or died from cancer. But I always wanted a family. I always wanted a husband. And I just wanted it to be just, because if my dad was trying to be the Jefferson, we was trying to be the Huxtables. So, you know, that's the way I look at it. But in all, it worked out. That's all I got for you tonight.
All
That's
right.
it.
I appreciate that. And that and you do have a point because when we would go to relatives' house, um when it was like going to a different world. I used to go out and we see somebody in New York. You either live in an apartment or you live in a multifamily or you live in what we call a private house. A private house is basically just a single resident house. And things like having a screen door and a front door was like it was something to aspire to because we didn't know. We just knew what we knew.
And but you
And
know what? And like I say, back in the time that I was growing up, that was just like my neighbors, they went to the grocery store and they purchased milk, just regular milk. But because my dad was quote unquote the man, they had milk delivered to our house in glass bottles. And I went over and the neighbor offered me some milk. And I was like, no, I can't drink that because our milk isn't like that. But when I got home, my mom gave me the business because she always said, you don't say things like that. But as a child, you
you
don't
don't know
know.
any better. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you're used to drinking milk from a glass bottle and you go to somebody's house and they trying to give you some out of a carton, you're looking, well, I was looking like, what? So, that's why I say being raised a certain way in a different era is certain things you just automatically think this is the way it's supposed to be because that's the way you grew up. So.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And that, you know what though, that does make sense in how we do things and how we look at things and our perspective. And like I said, we did things because that's what we saw, but we wouldn't our thing was we didn't want our kids to go through what we went through, and that's just how it is. But I think as parents, we became more helicoptery than our parents did because our parents are doing their own thing. And,
But you
you
know
know,
what? And I understand what you're saying. When you say helicopter parents, I always, as being a mom, I always expected my girls to want to do things the way in which I did it. But then my girls was quick to tell me everybody don't want to be the valedictorian of their class. Everybody don't want to do this. So I just stepped back. I said, well, I raised you to the very best that I could, but you do what you want to do. And what they were trying to tell me is don't set me up. Let me do what I want to do. So I stepped back and I let them do what they want to do because education was important to me. But they say as long as they make it and do what they want to do, they were fine with it. So I said, okay, well, let me step back. Okay, you don't have to be the valedictorian. Do what you want to do. Just get your high school diploma, get a GED, whatever you want. I got that type mode when it came to my kids because they felt like I had too high expectations of them. And so I just let them go for what they know. But what my one quote to them was, don't look at what your mom got, get your own.
that's sage advice. Special K, what's going on? Make my day. How you doing? She must be she must be on a reefer break.
Either trying, she trying to get unmuted.
Hold on, I'm on my phone and I have a hard time navigating the phone. Thank you. I'm good. I saw the post in the other chat and I said, since I'm home tonight, I decided I would like to, jump on and see what you guys are talking about.
Well, we're talking about how each generation sees love, marriage, and commitment. What generation are you?
So I'm a late 70s baby, 77. So I'm more in the 80s, early 90s was my
Generation X.
yeah. But I will say, listening to you, and I know we have an age, difference, but you are spot on. I'm from New Jersey, so growing up, New Jersey, New York, basically almost the same, as you know. So a lot of my experiences when you were talking was very, very much relatable. Because it was the same thing we were going through. As far as me personally, I didn't personally live in a house until I moved down south. Because, like you said, the majority of us grew up in apartments. You grew up in the concrete jungle. My mom is actually from New York, Harlem, and my dad was from New Jersey. So when she met him, her coming over to New Jersey, she didn't want to go back to New York because she told me that was really like the first time she really saw trees and things like that. Like, well, not trees. I should say more
I,
grassy area. Yeah,
grass in front of your house.
yeah.
That
And,
yeah.
so so I will say, my growing up was I think we kind of raised ourselves a little more back then because again, like you said, which is relatable, unfortunately a lot of like my generation and I guess yours, the parents unfortunately had fell victim to a lot of drugs and alcohol use. So a lot of us, kind of had to, you know. But I will say, I think it made me a stronger person. There's certain things, of course, I would change. I still had a loving family, and I had that old time grandmother, kind of like what Dr. Fabulous was explaining. Now, I saw marriage because my grandmother and my grandfather, from my dad's side, they, were married until death. And that was over 60 years, so that's all I saw with them, but they were still two hardworking people. They didn't just have it, but they were well, okay. And they put all their four children through school. So education was extremely important. And they played a big part in helping me raise my children, and I'm always thankful for that. But I think, I remember me growing up, even though things was a little rough. I mean, I remember like you walking through the air, it was nothing to wall. It was just crack vials, like all on the ground. And it's not, if you didn't have to go through that life, that is, you don't understand that you're actually really blessed because some of us have seen some things that we probably weren't even supposed to see that young.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think then that comes into play with what you were saying, how now I think you have one or two. You either have some people who just never come out of that, like they never break the cycle. And unfortunately, they continue the cycle. And then even though they have the means to do better, it's almost like they don't know better. And then you have the people that want to give their children like, oh no, I don't want to ever put my children through, the type of growing up I had to go through type of thing. And so they may push a little harder, and I kind of fall in that category. Like I just, I kind of was the same, we all want things for our children, but they're not going to always go the path we want them to go. But I also had standards and boundaries. Like y'all don't have to do certain things, but y'all can't just lay here and do nothing either.
Oh
You got.
no, no, that is I could say for sure, at least I can't say about everybody, but I know with my kids and I know with my sister's kids, they wasn't going to just be doing nothing. And like I said, we were more helicoptery than our parents was because especially during the internet age.
But I think our childhood, I must say that I think our childhood is just all in all, even if you kind of came up in a rough situation, I think it was better than what the kids nowadays, I think, have. I mean, because we knew how to play with each other.
Right.
We knew
But
go out. I mean, I remember we would be outside like especially in the summer, from like sun up to sundown. It was still good memories.
now and I agree, but here was the deal. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, everybody was a parent.
Yeah, everybody
So
out
you
for
could, yeah, you couldn't act,
What happened?
you couldn't act a fool and let somebody's mother see it because it'll get back to your parents before you even got back.
that is very true. Nowadays, you have to be careful speaking to other children, or something like that because you don't know how their parents are going to react.
Right. And that's what Dabs was saying, that, it was a lot different. It was a lot different. And it goes back to, we helicopter our kids, so we don't trust as many people. We don't trust as many people. So our kids are not getting the benefit of other people parenting and watching and looking out for you. And then it becomes, you know, my kids are not as social as we were, because like you said, we didn't go out. We went outside and played, and we couldn't come back in the house till a certain time.
And also I also came up with family that were like, you can have friends, you could go out, but my family did not trust people unfortunately too much, like as far as especially my grandmother. um we weren't allowed to go to people's homes to spend a night or play. They could come over, and that's just what it was. You just dealt with it. You didn't have to like it, but that was just the rule. So my mom used to throw like little parties at one point, like Halloween. I remember having Halloween parties at the house, things like that. And my friends would come to the house, but she wouldn't really allow me to go, to other people's homes. And that's one thing that a little bit carried over with me. My daughter says I'm a little she said I'm too much when it comes to that. But it's like, you can go and visit out in public. Like if y'all want to go to the movies, I'll drop you off. But I didn't really, all her life, I really didn't play that. No, you're not gonna go spend a night over anyone's home.
But there was also another thing that, and I'm gonna get to you, Dabs, is that with our parents, you couldn't go nobody's house if they didn't know you, if they didn't know their parents.
Correct. Yep.
You and we kind of took, that's one thing we did take from our parents. Said, do I know them? Do I know them? Do I know them? And if they didn't know if they didn't know whose house I was going to, I couldn't go. I couldn't go. But Dad, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, I was gonna say, backing off, I think what the Fabulous one said about, we, like you said, my family was that, I guess, silver age or whatever. And yeah, and as you grow up and you see that, they were together forever, um and you hope, you get that way as well. And as I was saying, you grow up and um you get into the new, I guess, generations of the new things that's going on, and or the person that you get with or you marry or didn't have that same. So you either conform, somebody's conforming, or you work something out together, and things happen to change. And I think that's what's going on a lot, with our as we grow up, we get together with different people who didn't grow up the same. I had silver mom and dad that stayed together forever, and the other ones had a mom that got married 2 times, 3 times. So I think those
Yeah,
kind of things just, yeah.
they kept doing it until they got it right.
Yeah.
Miss Kim, we ain't hear from you. We
Don't
ain't
talk
hear from
about me now.
we ain't hear from you tonight. Your parents were silent. Your parents were silent generation, and you're their only Generation X child.
Yeah.
What did, as a Generation X from the South, what was your experience in the dating world, and what did y'all do well in Georgia, and what y'all needed to work on?
Well, just thinking about what we did, I'm not going to say well, but maybe a little bit better than today is communication, because back then we spoke We talked on the telephone. We actually talked. We did not have the texting and all that was they doing now. Everything is texting, social media, but we didn't grow up with that. So we had to talk to one another either face to face or pick up the phone, the rotary dial phone, and call one another. And I think that's one thing we did differently than what they do now. Because even now, with people, the folks my age, they've gotten into the norm of what younger generation do as far as, oh, I don't talk on the phone, I just only text. I don't like texting because things could get misconstrued when you text. I might be saying it one way and the other person may take it differently. So that's why I rather talk things out. But yes, my parents was together to the day they died, and I always thought I was gonna have that forever, but it didn't work out like that for me. But I had good role models in my life, and I appreciate the things that I did learn from my parents. My father did not graduate high school, but he owned a business in Bullock County. He was a plumber and electrician. My mom did not have to work. And my dad was the type of person that my mom didn't have to want for anything. He even went out and bought grocery every Friday. She didn't even have to grocery shop. So, um, but nowadays things are quite different.
No, I definitely understand it. Now, here's a question. Do
Mm.
your kids are millennials and Gen Zs, are their romantic lives are they better, the same, or worse as they were for us?
Oh, that's kind of hard to say because they really don't. Just thinking about when I was back home in Georgia, they really didn't do a whole lot of dating because most of the guys didn't even have cars or even driver's license. So my daughters, both of them, had a car at the age of 16, even though I was a single parent. I made a way for them because they were active in school and I couldn't be everywhere with them. So they didn't do a whole lot of dating. Even when they went to the prom, the parents was not even able to purchase a corsage, for my daughters, but because my sister was a florist, she made it for them. And I rented the limousine. So I had to do a lot to even just help them go, their dates to get to the prom. I was that parent, because I did photography work, and I did all the pictures for them. So
Right.
yeah, it was different. It's different.
And you know what though? I'm gonna say for our kids it's worse because they are in a very precarious economic position than we were. Now we caught the end of Reaganomics, so we didn't have it great, but we were able to still get most of the stuff that we wanted. Our kids ain't they don't get the same opportunities. They don't get the same chances.
No, they don't.
You know, a mistake you make at 15 um can haunt you for the rest of your life. Now, I'm gonna say it like this, and I'm sure all of us in here can agree. When we were growing up, thank goodness there was no internet.
Exactly.
No social media, none of that stuff. And not to say that I use it today. I'm almost 60. I use it today, but no, it'd have been a lot things would have been a lot different had we had that stuff back then. And they have to navigate that stuff, and then we're perched on their shoulders trying to keep them on the right path. they it's not easy. It's not easy, and especially how people that you've never met, you only seen them on screen. They don't. They know that you know they know that you have ways to handle yourself, and you're not sitting up straight. You're not acting the way they want you to act, and then they kind of go off to the left. And like I said, you could have made a mistake, a error in judgment at 15, and you're still paying for it many years later. Back then, and they joke, they say a woman could have been very promiscuous as a teenager in the 60s and 70s, moved towns, change their lifestyle, and nobody would ever know. That can't happen today. That definitely can't happen today. If you acting a fool, somebody will see, and somebody got a camera. So I think that it's worse. What do you think, Apple?
I'm sorry. When you said, thank God we didn't grow up with the internet, I say yes, thank God, because the trouble I would have gotten, these kids post everything and everything, no, everybody know everything. That's not how you do things. But as far as like, I wanted to answer the initial question, like, I'm Gen Z and Gen X. I mean, I don't know why I said Gen Z because my daughter is Gen Z, but I'm Gen X. I'm sorry. And I think the pros of our generation is that we got to choose whether we wanted traditional or not. That I think that was the beginning of the generations thinking, okay, we don't have to do it like our parents did it. We don't have to
Right.
get married straight out of high school. And that don't have to be our number one priority. We can actually have both. We can or we can have both. We can get married and have a career because I know, a lot of the older generations, they wanted to be stay-at-home moms and, you know, they didn't have any choice. As soon as they finished school, it, the first thing they're gonna do is get married and, and spit out babies. But, us, we had a choice. We were like the beginning of I can do both or I can do either or I can do none. You know what I mean? And I think that was one of the pros.
Yeah,
One of
no.
the
So what do you think with the con?
the cons is we had to fend for ourselves, you know, and um as women, I can't speak of as men in a relationship, but as women, the men, in our generation, they were expecting you to be a gold digger or you know what I mean, or I don't know why I can't get my thoughts together because when you don't call on me, I got all these things going through my head, but to actually say it,
Stage fright.
stage fright, right? But I know, like, so like when I was dating in the '80s and in the well, really in the '90s because I was really young in the '80s, but late '80s, early '90s when I was dating, the guys that was dealing with, they had this preconceived notions about what women should want and what they should do and we should be submissive and things like that and I'm not built like that, so maybe that was a con because I wasn't able to fall into that role of I'm gonna listen to this man because the man is always right, but that
Right.
might just be my personal experience. I don't know how it would be with someone else. That was a con to me because even though they wanted you to have your own money or whatever, but they wanted to control your money. They wanted to control what you did, where you went, who you hung with, things like that, because they had that old fashioned notion that, men are always right. They are, the head of the household, this, that, and blah, 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 blah. So that was a con for me.
Right, right. And overall, a lot of us, like I said, we've done those things, or we've been through those things, and now it's different on how we look at life and how we look at romance. And I don't know if it's better for our kids or worse, but I like I said, they have a lot more distraction and destruction than we did, because even when having intimate relations, they got so much, we ain't had to worry about, we caught the beginning of HIV, and that was like a death sentence back then. Now it's like they give you meds, but they're getting a lot of different ones like HSV and other things like that, and that's just as bad. And you know and women are chasing the same 10 guys, and the guys want the top women, but ain't got you know ain't got top woman game. And then but that's everybody today, people are more, in my opinion, I think they're more delusional as far as what they want and what they have. But we are at our time tonight. This was a very engaging and thorough subject, and I appreciate my crew from the upscale side coming on tonight and bringing that heat, bringing that fire, as Little Bo Peep used to say. And I look and if y'all want to come on Thursday nights, 8:30, captained by Dr. Fabulous, the one and only. And you got Madam D, you got Special K, you got a few others that'll be on. But I want to thank everybody coming on tonight. Before I go, I want to hear from my co-host, Chocolate Pearl.
I want to thank everybody for coming on. It was good to see and hear, well, really see your pictures, but hear your wonderful voices from Upscale. I appreciate y'all coming on. And thank you for all of our normal people that came on. Thank you for participating. This was a great topic to where it just flowed so well. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you next time. Same back channel, same back time.
And make it on time. Stop being on CP, please.
It was my it was my computer. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Working
yeah,
all these
yeah,
different
yeah.
computers. I'm on
Pay
three
your
different
bill.
computers right now. So hey, trying to
Pay
multitask, trying to
pay
multitask.
pay your daggone bill. Apple.
It was an interesting topic, and I'm glad to see all these different people that came on this week. Hi everyone, thank you for joining.
And
And
we got a beam sighting tonight. What's going on? The lady that's also mean and also green, but she's definitely Miss Beam. What's going on with you?
Thought I was going to be able to see. I'm actually awake tonight. I got out a little late, but I'm actually awake tonight. So sorry for the last couple of weeks and like a month or two, because I fall asleep easily nowadays. The closer to 50 I get, the more I fall asleep at 6 o'clock. So I work until 9. I apologize. Next week I will be on in a new location, in a new old location, and hopefully I'll be able to participate next week.
If you don't fall asleep, but that's all right. We love you and we love you anyway.
I got all along. Um, while I'm still up at work, I will be participating next week. Yeah.
That sounds like a winner. So I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. My the fam, my co-hosts, my sisters, and my fam, and all of those out there in YouTube land, in Facebook land, IG land, Rumble land. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for coming on, hanging out with us, sharing time. If you got anything you want to add, just email me, DELITE, the number 7 at gmail.com. You can hit me up, just, and if it's interesting, I will be glad to cover it. But on that note, I'm going to hit y'all with the closeout. Thanks for watching. This is the man with the golden voice, the lady's choice, and of course, smooth as a Rolls Royce, saying, never make love by the garden gate. Though love is blind, the neighbors ain't. Good night, all.
Good night.
I think